Hello, everybody. My name is Leah. I'm the administrative assistant here at Africa Fire Mission. I just want to welcome you all here today. It's so great to have everyone at today's training. We're really excited. We have Chief Mike Kull here today. He's been with AFM for a while and he is just a pro at doing presentations. And so we're really excited to have him here today. But before we get into any word encouragement or our presentation, I just want to give out a couple of reminders. The first being that this is recorded, and so I'm going to be posting it on YouTube later. So if there's something that you thought, oh, that was really great, but I don't quite remember what was said, and you want to go back and watch it, or just refresh your mind later, it'll always be open for you to do that. And there's all of our past trainings on there as well. So if you ever miss one, you can definitely go and look at that. And I also want to remind everybody just to stay muted throughout the training. And if you have a question or a comment, both are welcomed, but please raise your hand and we will call on you, or also we can type it. If you type it in the chat, I'll read it and I can say it as well. That just makes the audio a little bit smoother for everyone else. And I want to let everyone know that I will be giving certificates today. If you attend 70% of the training, and that usually looks like 45 minutes if it's an hour-long training. If it's a little less than that, then I'll adjust the time just so that it's still at 70% for the certificate. And whatever name you are logged on with right now, whatever name you see on your Zoom is the name that's on the certificate. And so if you don't want that to be your name, please change it. I can see that you change it, and I'll get the right name on there. It's a lot easier if you do it ahead of time rather than me having to go back and fix it after we're all done. But for all the announcements, that's about it. So I'm going to pass it off to Errol right now, and he has a little bit of a word of encouragement.
Thank you very much, Leah. Thank you very much, Leah. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. Today, a word of encouragement comes from a story of a carpenter who was a very famous in our town. He used to do a very wonderful job in his carpentry shop, and everyone used to love his seats, the way he used to make his chairs, seats, tables, and also the reading tables. So one day he was given a task by the governor of that city. He was given a contract to construct a library. So a carpenter, being a carpenter, did not put in mind that it wasn't a big thing. So he went on and constructed the interior of the library, and also, first he drew down the drawing, he drew the sketches, the library on a paper, and then he procured wood and then designed a library, a very wonderful library. Then, after the completion of the job, the governor came to open the library. And guess what? The governor told him, this is your library. So, interestingly, as the carpenter was making the library, he didn't design it to be the state of the art. He just did a shoddy job, thinking that, at the end of the day, I'm just getting paid and I'm going home. On the reverse, when the library was being opened and the public was there present, it appeared that he will be owning the library. The carpenter felt sad and discouraged, frustrated, and depressed, because now all the resources that was given, that he was using, are from the government and the governor himself. So there was no way he could acquire more resources because they were very expensive and it was very hard to procure them. What lesson are we learning from this story? All of us are tasked in our fire stations, in our departments, to take care of the property and the equipment that we have. We need to use them wisely in such a way that whatever happens, we maintain the department for the new ones who are coming, and also for the planning ahead. You never know. You might head that department. You might be the chief. You might be the administrator. You might be the one in charge. You might be the owner of that department at some point. So whatever resources that is bestowed upon us, either big or small, let's make effort and maintain them. If they are worn out, let's try and repair them. If you are able to procure new ones, then go ahead and procure them. And also, let's take care of them, because those are our tools that we use each and every day. That's where we spend most of our hours. That's where we go and do, those are the things we use to go and do rescue and save lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, whatever equipments, whatever materials that you're using in your department, in your fire station, in your fire trucks, in your offices, stationery, anything else, take care of them as if they are your own. That's it for the word of encouragement for today. And let's enjoy the lesson by Chief Mike.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Errol. We really appreciate every time that you take the time out of your day and come do the word of encouragement. And so thank you very much for that. And Errol will also be the one leading tea time after the session today as well. And so I just want to remind everyone right before we hop in, please stay muted. It just makes the audio a little bit smoother for everyone. So Chief Mike, it's off to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you all took some time out of your day to come out and get a little bit of training here. Today's topic is going to be a little bit of a continuation of what we talked about last week. Jose got us started talking about fire prevention programs and running fire prevention programs. So today we're going to talk a little bit about measuring the success of those programs and trying to figure out if what we're doing is working and what we can do to continue and continue to have that sort of success. So we're going to jump right in here. The first thing we want to talk about is what kind of goals do you have with your fire prevention? Why are we doing fire prevention? Okay, if we want to measure our outcomes, we want to know if we're being successful, we need to know what we're trying to accomplish first. So what sort of things are we looking for in that fire prevention program? Are we trying to reduce the number of fires? Are we trying to reduce the number of injuries from fire that we see? Deaths, or just fire loss in general? People are losing homes and property. Are we trying to get that value of fire loss reduced? So we take a look at what our goals are, and these are going to be different for each community. And you're going to need to evaluate your community and sit down and sort of talk as a group. What are our goals? What are our objectives when we try to put together our fire prevention program? If we're going to measure the success of the program, we need to look at some data. We need to look at some information. So what types of information should we be gathering in order to see how effective our programs may be? Couple simple ones. What's the population? What's the, how many people are we serving in our area that we respond to? And that number will come in handy as we get down the road. Toward the end of the presentation here, we're going to do some we're going to show you some formulas to do some specific calculations and get some real numbers as to the effectiveness of your fire prevention. And I might lose some of you. Some of it gets a little bit complex. It's not the easiest thing to understand, but that's okay. We're going to talk about easy ways to measure that success and then more complicated ways to measure that success. So we're looking at our population served. How many people are we serving? What are the number of deaths that we get per year related to fire? Same with injuries. And then another thing we want to look at is what are the causes of fires that we're seeing? What's the main cause of fire that we're seeing? And maybe we're going to take those top three causes of fire and focus on those as our means of, those are the areas that we want to target for our fire prevention activities. So where do we get this information? Couple different sources where you can find the information that we're looking for. Your municipal records, your city records should have some information available about population. Of course, you can always do an internet search and see what kind of information you can find there, but we're looking for a general number of people that our department serves. When we're looking at things like injuries or deaths that are related to fires, that's information that you may be able to get from a hospital. It depends on how your individual systems work, where you're at. If there's a government official that's involved anytime there's a death, that would be an office that you would go to try to track information about how many deaths you have related to fire in a year. And of course, we have our own resources, right? We have our resources, our own fire brigade resources, the reports that we take. And there's where it's important that you document when you do have injuries related to fire, when there are deaths, that you document that information and then store those fire reports in such a manner that you can easily access that information. And that information is readily available to you when you want to start to analyze this data and try to see, are we being successful in our efforts here? There's sort of 4 accepted methods of measuring the success of our programs, of our fire prevention programs. We can measure need, we can evaluate the process, we can look at the impact that we're making out in the community, and then we can look at sort of some tangible outcomes of our data. So the first one is need. And here's where we're looking at what is it that we're trying to accomplish in our fire prevention programs. We're looking at how did we come up with that? Are we trying to reduce fires? Are we trying to reduce death? We're trying to improve the support among the public. That's something that's really important for you guys, is improving your public image so that you know, there's no violence when you respond to the call. So the first thing we need to measure is how did we come up with our needs? Who evaluated those? And are they realistic? Our fire prevention programs cannot be successful if the goals that we're trying to reach, they aren't realistic or they aren't needed. So that's the first measurement. We're going to measure the need. We're going to look at what do we need to do and how did we come up with that, and is that valid? That's our first step. We evaluate that and we say, yep, we've had, you know, a high number of fires related to cooking incidents. So as we set up our program, then that's what we're going to focus on, not some other cause, maybe electrical issues, right? And I'm sure that's an issue as well, poor electrical connections. But if you're seeing more cooking fires, let's address that cooking need first. The next method that we want to look at is measuring the process. So, you know, what was our plan? Do we have a formal plan for how we plan to do our fire prevention program? Have we set out a certain number of things to do? Have we decided that once a week we're going to be going to visit someone, be it the market, be it the school, be it a church group? And then to evaluate our process, what have we actually completed of that? It's great to have big plans about what we want to do, but if we don't carry out those plans, we're not going to be successful. So as an example, if we sit down and we decide for our fire prevention program for this year, we want to go out and hold 10 fire prevention events throughout the community. And at the end of the year, we sit down to evaluate how our fire prevention plan is working out for us. We've only done 5 events. We didn't do those 10. There's a way to measure the success of our plan. We could say that our process for fire prevention was unsuccessful, right? We only did half of the events that we planned to. Now, part of this is when we're setting up our plans. Of course, we don't want to be unrealistic about our plans as well. We don't want to say, we're going to go out and we're going to do 100 events 100 times throughout the year. We're going to get out in that community, interact with the community, and do fire prevention. 100 is probably not realistic. That's more than, that's almost 2 a week. Maybe you can't get out there and do that. It'd be great if you could. Then on the other hand, as we evaluate, right, if we only had 5 events planned and we end up doing 10 events, we do twice as many events as we had planned, that's a good indicator that our fire prevention program is successful. Our people are interested in it. They're going out and they're working above and beyond what we've planned to do. So there's a good measurement where we can say, yep, as we look at our fire prevention process, we're doing well. It's pretty successful. The next category is measuring impact. And this one is a bit subjective. This is based on more opinion than it is on hard facts. But are we seeing changes? Are there any results? Are things getting better? We were looking for a reduction in fire loss value. Okay, and over the past year, things have been better. We've had fires. Maybe there's the same number of fires, but the damage isn't as much because we've been out there and we've been teaching ways to put the lid on a pot if you've got a grease fire or something to that effect. Are there any types of results that we can see out there in the community? How's the reaction when we arrive at an incident? Are the people welcoming us there, trying to help us out, or are they throwing stones at us? Some of that impact you can see when you go and work at the schools. Schools are where we do most of our fire prevention work here in the U.S. We do them in the schools, and they're a great place to get some feedback, to get some information on, is our plans being successful? We can speak to the teachers, ask the teachers' opinion.
Hey, Mike, I think
Okay.
that you were muted there for a second.
What about the students? When we go into the schools and we present a lesson plan, we're going to teach stop, drop, and roll to the kids. When we go into that classroom, if we've been there before and we say, okay, who knows how to do stop, drop, and roll? And most of the students already know how to do it. That's great. That's great information that we can take. That's a great indicator that we're having success. Sometimes speaking with the parents, and you don't have to go to the school, speak to some of the parents in the neighborhoods and the communities that you've been out and working in, and ask them, what do your kids know about fire prevention? Do they know how to crawl low under smoke? Do they know stop, drop, and roll? Get that feedback from the parents. And then in the schools, depending on the relationship that you get established with the schools, maybe there could be the teachers would help out with a test or quiz, and you could come up with a set of questions that maybe a week or two after you've visited a school, the teachers revisit those subjects with a little test for the kids. And it's really interesting sometimes to see some of the answers that you get from children based on the presentations that you've done to them. So it's kind of fun to ask them some of those questions and get the teachers involved with maybe of course, a fun little test or quiz to see and give us a little feedback on what kind of impact we're making. When we look at the impact of that public support, what are some of the things that we're looking at there? As we're out in the community, and you ask folks, hey, what's the number? How do you know how to call us? What's the number for the fire brigade? Do people know the number? Is that information getting out there? Are they sharing it with their friends? Those are great ways to measure it. One of the things that may seem a little odd is, as you start your fire prevention programs, you start to see success with them. Are you receiving more calls than you usually do? And as we get started, that's a good thing. I'm sure that there are a lot of incidents that are taking place where it would be appropriate for the fire department to be called, for the fire brigade to be called, but no one's calling you guys. And it's frustrating, especially when the community gets upset because you weren't there to help them, but no one ever called you. So in the beginning of our journey through fire prevention and doing a good job with our fire prevention, it'll be a good thing if we start to get more calls for service. As time goes by and our prevention efforts get successful, we should see that number of calls will increase at first, and then as the program builds with success, we should see that number begin to go back down and hopefully go down below where it was before we started doing our fire prevention programs. The one thing that I want to encourage you as I talk about this, maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, this isn't good. If the calls that we get begin to go down, am I going to lose my job? And that's not the case. That's not going to happen. That's not something that we should be concerned about. That's certainly not a reason why we should not do fire prevention. Okay, there will always be emergencies. There will always be a need for us to be out there in the community, to be out there helping people. So we're always going to have that job. So let's be sure that we're getting out there and doing that prevention. And then last one that I have there, how's your welcome to the community? Are you seeing those acts of violence against you, or has that improved? Has that gotten better? Have things gotten safer for you to do your job? That's a very tangible thing. It's very easy to see and understand. Yep, we're really getting some better public support here.
Can we pause for just one moment?
The final
Chris has
one
his
is
hand
sort
raised.
of our 4 means is measuring the outcome. And we're going to talk about some basic ways that we can do that. And then we'll throw a little bit of math in there. Be sure everybody's got your pencils and paper and ready. We'll start doing some math questions, right? And then we'll get to a little bit more complex one that'll give us sort of a number that we can work off of to try to determine what our success level is. But here's the basic, the very simple way of determining, are we seeing success in our fire prevention? How many fires did we get this year compared to how many fires we had last year? Okay, very basic, really easy. That information should be available in our own brigades, in our chief's office, whoever's responsible for maintaining the records. How many fires last year? How many fires this year? Are we getting any better? And then that's the same with injuries. It's the same with tracking deaths. Sometimes that information isn't readily available to us. Sometimes that information isn't contained in our own reports. Usually, you should be able to indicate in your reports that someone was injured in a fire. You may not know if someone dies as a result of fire because they may pass away, days, weeks, or even months down the road after the incident takes place. And a lot of times we don't always have access to those folks or those families to know how to follow up with that. So there's where we'd go back to that office, that city office that maintains the death records, or the hospital, and see if they can provide us with that information. And of course, that always helps all of our efforts for advocating for our own, the betterment of our fire brigades by having those interactions with those city departments and things like that. If we get a little bit more complicated in how we look at the numbers and we start to get into statistics, a statistic that we like to use is called a per capita statistic. Per capita basically tells you, based on the population, you know, how many of whatever piece of data we're trying to study, what is that? So in our top example here, we've got how many fires are there per capita. So we take the number of fires and we divide that by the population. Okay. So the per capita number of fires, you know, if there's 100 fires, you know, out of 100,000 people, okay, and that's our per capita rate. And for every 100,000 people, right, there's this many fires. Same with if we're talking about what are the chances, you know, you hear that a lot of times, you know, there's a 1 in, you know, I don't know what the number is, a 1 in 100 chance that you'll get eaten by a shark if you go swimming somewhere, right? How do we calculate that? So the mathematical way that we calculate that is to take that per capita number and divide 1 by that number. So we're going to make a fraction, and that will tell us that there's a 1 in whatever chance. So if we look down here, our example of fire deaths, and you know, these numbers, these are just random numbers that I chose, but if you had a population that you serve, so your brigade serves 435,000 people, that's in your response area, and in the last year, you had 17 people who died as a result of fire. We're going to take that 17, we're going to divide that, that's the number of fire deaths, we're going to divide that by the population, 435,000, and then that's going to give us this tiny little number, 0.000039. That's our per capita number of fire deaths. But then we're going to put that into a fraction. So 1 divided by 0.000039 will give us our chance of death. So if we do those calculations, that's going to say that 1 in every 25,641 people in the area we serve will die in a fire based on the numbers that we have. And that can be a very eye-opening number, especially if we do have a higher number of fire deaths or fire injuries in our area. As that number begins to reduce, it'll be very impactful to show how our programs are being successful. So if you start out and the chances are, you know, 1 in every, 100,000 people are likely to die in a fire in our area. And then as things get better and as you get out there, get the message out, you advance your fire prevention programs, that number drops from 100,000 to 1 in 50,000, and then 1 to 25,000. Then we bring that number down so that it's, or excuse me, we want to bring that number up so that number goes up. As the deaths go down, that number goes up. So we want that number to be like 1 in a million chance, right, of somebody getting dying in a fire. So there's sort of the math, and this is a little bit complicated. I'm going to show you where you can find this slideshow. It'll be up within probably 2 weeks of this presentation. We'll have this posted up on the web. I'm going to show you later on where to get that. So you can come back and take a look at these slides and use these slides to help you do your calculations, where you can just plug in your own numbers. So that one was a little bit complicated, but not too bad. This next formula, at first glance, boy, it sure doesn't make a lot of sense. Somebody came up, wanted to come up with a number that they could say, this number represents scientifically the results of fire prevention. So we get this formula, R equals FC plus FD over P. Seems really complicated. If we start to break it down a little bit more, it's not quite as complicated as it first seems. So here in this mathematical formula, what this represents, R represents risk. So that's the number that we're looking for. We're going to put a number that we consider this risk. And then as we evaluate our programs, as that number goes up or down, that will show us whether our risk factor for fire is going to change. So in the equation, F is equal to frequency of fires, C is equal to the number of casualties, and D, now of course this formula was developed here in the US, so the D stands for dollars of fire loss. We're going to plug in shillings or kwacha or whatever your currency is. But that's just sort of a baseline. We're going to take all that information and we're going to divide it by the population. So how does this work? This calculation of risk is equal to the frequency of fires multiplied by the number of casualties. And then you take the frequency of fires and multiply it by the dollars of fire loss. You add those two numbers together and divide that by the population that you're serving. And this is going to give you what appears to be just an arbitrary number, a number that doesn't make a lot of sense to you. But if we think about how this formula was developed, it's very interesting in that it factors in not only was someone injured or died in a fire, but the actual value of the fire loss as well. When we're looking at the success of our fire prevention programs, if our number of fires are going down, but the dollars of damage, the value of damage is going up, then our fire prevention program may not be working as well as we think it is. So using this formula, we're really combining those two pieces together, injury and death, which is what we would consider casualty. We're combining injuries and deaths to give us that casualty number. And then we're factoring that in along with the dollar loss, dividing it by the population. And this is going to give you that number that then we start to look at that number. And as that number increases or decreases, it's going to show us the effectiveness of our fire prevention program. That's a pretty complicated way to do things. It's interesting to try it out and see what kind of information really you gather from that. I encourage you to give it a try, see if you can figure that out, look at that number. If you've got access to some of this information over a number of years, take a look at it, try it out, and see if it's changing, see if things are sort of staying steady, staying the same. Give it a try. See if that gets you any information that you can work off of. Once we've done this, once we've figured out how we're going to try to evaluate our fire prevention programs here, the other important thing is when we evaluate them and we see whether we're having success or not, we've got to tell someone about it. In order to, and that's a part of fire prevention. That's a way that'll actually help us to continue our mission with fire prevention by getting out there and telling people what's going on. So who do we report our results to? Okay. Maybe in your fire brigade, maybe your chief officer isn't interested in fire prevention. Maybe he's not interested in seeing these results. So you can try to gather some of this information as just a firefighter. You don't have to be an officer. You don't have to be a chief officer to gather some of this information. But maybe you would take that information together and you go visit, schedule an appointment. Chief, can I talk to you? And take a look at what we've been doing. We've been out in the community. This is what we've been doing. And based on some of the information that I've gathered, we're seeing some success. As you can show that success to your chief officer, he should be more open to you spending more time doing that fire prevention work. If your numbers are looking good, if you need some help, take that information and report it to your city council. See what the process is to speak with someone from the city council. The more support we can get from our city councils, the more they can maybe budget money for the fire brigade to get us the equipment that we need. Some of those basic things that you're really wanting to get. If you can show that you're out in the community, that you're making things better for the community, that the presence of the fire department in the community is reducing injuries, reducing death, saving property, and you demonstrate that to the city council, you improve that relationship with the city council, it's going to help you advocate for yourself and get you more of the tools that you need. Sometimes there's community groups. I know in some areas, your markets are run by an organization that sort of manages the markets. As you go out there and see success in some of your fire prevention programs, meet with some of those community groups, meet with the local churches, meet with the local schools, tell them what you've been doing and the good that you've seen come out of that. Part of this this fire prevention, a lot of what I've been speaking about is reducing fire deaths or loss of property. But part of that fire prevention is also doing some what we call a fire inspection, or where you're going out and evaluating the local markets and looking for danger there, looking at some of the local industry, visiting the local industry and seeing what sort of safety methods they have in place, seeing if they have any sort of fire control systems, and evaluating that sort of stuff. That's all part of it too. And then you can go back and report your results to those groups. Who else do you report to? Well, here at AFM, we would really appreciate it if you would report your results to us, if you would report the programs that you do to us. Here I've got 2 links posted, and we'll get those down in the chat for you at some point in time too. I'm going to click on one, and here I got it pulled up here. When you go out and do a fire safety training, if you follow this link, and I'll show you how to get to this on our website, but what you're looking at now is the Africa Fire Mission website, and we've got this form to collect information when you go out and do community fire prevention. So give us your name, your email address, a phone number, when you did the training, what country are you in, what city, what county are you in, who did you go to? Was it the school, the community, the market, the church, the mosque? Okay. Wherever that may be, where did you go? What was your audience? Describe them, give us a little description about who your target group was and why you went out there. How many people were there total that you presented your program to? And it's not necessary that you have exact numbers. If you've got a big crowd, if it's too big of a crowd to count, that would be awesome, right? Give us an estimate. How many children, how many adults? Was it mostly men? Was it mostly women? If you can give us some numbers, that'd be great. And then we have a list of categories of what you did, and those are some great hints. If you're looking, well, what can we do for our fire prevention programs? Check out this page. Here's a list of stuff. Any of those items. Click on that. Show us what you did there. And then describe the training a little bit. We'd love for you to submit some photos of you doing that training. If you submit these forms and you submit photos to us as we get time, we have the opportunity to feature these trainings on our social media sites and try to get that information out there and really to show the world what you guys are doing so far as training goes. The other advantage to submitting this information to us is that at the end of the year, we compile all this information and we'll send you back a report if you provide us with your email address. At the end of the year, we'll send you a report that shows what type of training you were out in the community doing. And this is awesome. We're doing some of the work for you, right? So at the end of the year, you'll have this, and that'll give you some of your information for measuring the success of your program, right? By looking at some of this information. So I highly encourage you to check that out. Check out that link. Let me get back to, here we go. Let's see. Where's my presentation? Here it is. Okay, back to the presentation here. If you go to our website, africafiremission.org, of course, that's our main website. If you go into the top corner, or sometimes it's a banner across the top, there's a section resources. If you go into that resources, you can find some more information. Go under that tab. If you look at the screen now, on my screen, it's showing up as a little pull-down menu up here in the top. When I click on that, if you go to resources and open that up, we've got training materials, fire safety curriculum, firefighter blog. When you go,
your screen is stuck on the
that's going to bring you to
slides.
this page here. This is the page where you're going to find the information about reporting your trainings to us. There's some links here to register for the training. There's our firefighter blog. I would encourage you to go check out that firefighter blog. That is where at least once a month we have an article on there, talks about different topics. There's the newest one up there right now is an article I wrote about leadership with limited manpower. There's another one I did recently about small engine care and maintenance. Check those out. And then here's our virtual trainings. And this is where you'll be able to find the presentation that I'm doing today, and you'll be able to find the video recording of this whole training. So you can find that there. You can go back and reference this. And as we scroll down and we get past those, you'll find down here a link to our networking group. That I know a lot of you guys belong to the networking group. There's our fire prevention materials. If you click on that link, we've got fire prevention materials that you can print off, that you can download, that you could use. They're in a lot of different languages. Here's the fire safety assessment that I was talking about. Click on that. Excuse me, that's a little bit different. That's your fire safety assessment. That is where, when you're going out to the market and you're evaluating the market for fire safety, you're going out to a church, you go out to a school, you go out to an industry, and you're reviewing, you're checking out what they're doing so far as fire safety, what they could do better, trying to help them out to get better with that sort of thing. We click on that, that'll take us over. Let's see if it's going to load for me. It's a Google form, okay, and it's just collecting some of that same information that we did with the training. Okay, so lots of different resources there, and then from that training resource page, that's where we got. When we scroll down on that, that's where we input our fire prevention training here on the report training events. Okay. And then just to finish off this page, since we're here and we're talking about it, these links down below are training materials from our trips when we come to see you guys in Kenya, in Malawi, the presentations that we did there, some of that information, that all gets posted there. There's a whole bunch of training information there, different places that you can report what you're doing. So please, please, please take advantage of that. You can also just go to YouTube and look at the search for Africa Fire Mission on YouTube, and you'll find that's where we also post the videos of these trainings that we're doing here online. You can always go back, share those with the other folks that you know that maybe weren't able to attend. So that's sort of reporting, okay? And then after we've done all of this stuff, so we've gathered our data, we've come up with some numbers, we've seen what we're doing, We've told people the results. Yes, we're doing good here. We've shared that with the city. You've shared it with us at AFM. You've shared it with your fire chiefs. You shared it with the community. The final step is, what do we do with that data once we've got it, once we've reported it? And that's to start again. Now we're going to start the whole process over again. We're going to reevaluate our programs. Are they working? What do we need to do better? Were we too ambitious? Did we say we're going to do 100 programs a year? We only got to do 50 of them. So for the next year, maybe we're going to reset our goals and make them a little bit more realistic. Or maybe we well exceeded our goals. So let's try to do something better the next year. Maybe we've taken care of a problem in our community. Hopefully, after a couple of years of doing some interactions with the community, we don't have to worry so much about being stoned when we get to the incident, right? So maybe we change our tactics. We don't focus so much about on, hey, we're here to help you. We pivot to something else. So let's evaluate what we've been doing, and then, like I said, we're starting that whole process over again to keep going with our fire prevention program. And this is something that never stops. You know, we're always evaluating what we're doing, checking out our results, and seeing where we can improve. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 5 years. It may not happen in 10 years that you see lots of improvement, but as long as we're looking at what we're doing and we're seeing some of these numbers, whatever method you're using to evaluate, we're seeing those numbers begin to increase, we know we're doing the right thing. That's pretty much all I have on the subject. I know some of that might have been a little bit complicated with some of the numbers. You've got to break out the calculator, do a little bit of math to figure out some of that stuff. But now I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and sort of open things up to whether we've got any questions. I haven't had a chance to look through the chat. I've been busy yakking too much. So what do you guys have for me? Any questions? Any comments? What do you think? I see we've got our links in the chat. Thank you, Leah.
Nixon, I see that you are unmuted. Do you have anything that you would like to say? Any comments or questions? All right. Suleiman, I see that your hand is raised. What would you like to say? You can unmute and ask your question or your comment.
Oh, sorry, I just joined later. Mike Kull here.
Oh, hello. No, what'd you say?
Hey.
Someone else can just go on. I've just joined late, but just said in the chats, better late than never.
Yes, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, but there is one hand raised. Suleiman, do you want to say anything? You are muted if you're talking, so we can't hear you right now.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Actually, first I thank Mr. Mike. Your presentation was very good. And what we heard from you, that is clear. But one thing, at the end of the re-evaluation, do you sit down and discuss about mental health in case you attend in a fire when you are returning back to the station?
Yeah, absolutely. We call that, we have a whole process that we do here in the US, CISD. It's a critical incident stress debriefing. It's you know, it's a different topic than fire prevention, but I'm glad that you bring that up, because it really plays in well with that. When you have a serious incident where typically We see a lot of trouble when we have incidents involving children and incidents involving the death of children. And that can really take a toll on us as firefighters. We have a whole process there where, you know, we're very fortunate. You know, we're far ahead of where a lot of your fire brigades are at. You guys are going to get there someday, I'm sure of it. You talked about last week, we talked a little bit about insurance and things like that. And, you know, our fire brigades have insurance that provide us with counselors when we have those incidents where we need to deal with those mental health issues. But if you don't have those resources, the main thing to do is when you get back from an incident, especially as a leader, but really even amongst the firefighters themselves, if you're at an incident that was pretty bad, that you saw some things that you think could really cause some issues, you've got to talk about it. And so you get back to the station as you're getting your equipment restored. You know, I always say to my folks, you know, listen, you know, hey, this was no good, right? And we do it certainly every time there's a death, no matter what. If we're on an incident that involves death, you know, hey, you know, what we saw tonight wasn't, you know, we don't normally see this sort of stuff. And does anybody want to talk about it? And does any, you know, there's a couple different ways we can go. We have counselors available to us, mental health professionals that we can refer them to. If you don't have those resources available, is there a church? Is there some sort of clergy, a church, a mosque, a temple that you could refer them to try to talk things through? But absolutely, it's something that you need to address. And yet, you know, it does kind of fall into this prevention, because for us to do well and to do our prevention, to stay active and encouraged and happy about our jobs, we've got to be sure we get our mental health squared away. Biggest thing I tell you, you know, talk to someone if you can arrange with a local church to provide you with someone who can serve as your fire chaplain. That's someone that your folks can talk to after a critical incident or something like that. That would be a great tool to have in your toolbox.
And okay, thanks. And another thing is, due to this, a lot of awareness and training. I remember when I read some articles from US, the fire incidents in 2020, in the year 2020, the domestic fire was around 75%, vehicle incident is around 20%, and other miscellaneous incidents, which is around 10%. Now, in this 2022 or for the year 2021, because we are doing the comparison from the year 2021 and 2022, how do you think? Is it reduced, or the percentage is still the same?
So those percentages, sometimes that information there isn't the most accurate, because it's very different for every department. For whatever reason, the area where my department is, we see very little fire. In our area, of course, it's pretty rural, but in our area, if we have 3 or 4 house fires in a year over a large area, you know, that's what we average. So you have to be careful when you're evaluating your statistics and you're looking at those things, because we get lots of calls for maybe a fire alarm in someone's home. We have residential fire alarm systems here. Some of the more wealthy folks have a fire alarm system in their home, right? Every time we go to one of those, because they burnt their food they were cooking that night, that shows as a house fire, but it really isn't. In my area, we do most of our work, 75% of what we do are vehicle accidents, because we have a major highway running through our area. So, you know, do you see, for the most part, the statistics that you'll see from the US, they stay pretty steady. so we don't see a whole lot of impact. That's the really neat thing about the position that you guys are in. As you begin to focus on your fire prevention, you're going to see movement in these numbers. As you get out into the community, raise awareness, you evaluate, go into your markets and evaluate your markets for safety. You do these different things. You guys are going to see those numbers change. Like I said, initially, they're going to go up a little bit, and that'll be a good thing. More people are calling for our help, but you will see those numbers go down. We're past that point in the U.S. Our goal is to maintain a steady number. Of course, we'd like to see them drop, but that's probably not realistic. But you guys are in that position where your numbers are going to be high, and you're going to be able to see those numbers reduce as you get out and work in the community.
Oh, thank you, Lord. Thanks. I really appreciate.
Samuel, you've got your hand raised there. What do you have to say?
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Okay,
sorry. Hello.
Yes, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Okay. Thank you so much for this kind of topic for today. I've learned a lot, although I came late because I was still busy in the fair house. I'm from Kisumu City, that's Kenya, and I like what my colleague have just said on the PSS, because we always need it most of the time. And as you mentioned earlier, I think I call it AAR, the after action review, after having a debrief after every mission, after every rescuing mission or fire rescue and so on. We are supposed to have a debrief and see what was going on and what went wrong. That's where you can now identify specific firemen or specific fire lead or any fire paramedic who had kind of maybe a challenge or is being affected mentally, on how you can sort it out. Maybe having a PSS session, that's psychological support session for him, or is it a referral case? There's also another way that we can do it within our within the firehouse. Maybe having a discussion the way that you have said it, and at times we can also call it psychological first aid, like trying to support him in any way, trying to come up with activities any way that will bring him back, in maybe to try to bring him back in this normal situation. Maybe we'll say that maybe we are removing the body maybe from a dam or from a rivers. Like currently we are in the biggest lake, one of the biggest freshwater lake, that's Lake Victoria. We have been called upon maybe to retrieve bodies from these lakes, from these rivers, and such kind of situation that we have found ourselves. Maybe the firefighter was in the mission, did not want maybe to take meat or having such kind of smell and so on. So we have to get we have to create environment that is suitable for him, so that he cannot remember, he cannot maybe have the kind of smell that he was used to see maybe during the mission, the rescuing mission, or recover the situation. Another thing that I'm also requesting, maybe kind of a discussion, also having a team building is also critical for the firemen. Maybe dancing together, maybe going out for some time, maybe having just a team building among the firemen. It's kind of a good thing that will always bring our mind together, and will always come up with the games. You can play tennis or table tennis within the firehouse. It's again will give us kind of energy and kind of thinking as we play such kind of games. Then I was requesting, I know I became late, is there a report template for maybe a standard one, maybe for reporting the scene? And if it's there, can I get maybe a template, or maybe one of the family can share with me the template, so that I can maybe present, because I've been having difficulty in presenting my reports to the higher bosses. So if I can be assisted, I'll be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to. That's a good idea, and something we should find a place to post somewhere on our website is some sort of, you know, generic template of incident reporting or something like that. So we'll make note of that and see what we can put together for you. Just one other suggestion, I guess, that I have, Samuel. Those are some great points you made there. And for me personally, one of the ways that, you know, the main way that I deal with the stuff that I see working as a firefighter, and that I keep my mental health clear is, you know, my faith in God is what supports me a lot through there. And that's a great resource for folks that to try to help with some of that mental health, and that strong faith in God helps you when you face those tough situations. And it's also a great way to do some team building with your other firefighters, is to go and participate in worship together and go out to the church together and events together. So just something I want to throw in there, because that's super important to me. That's one of the important most important parts of my life is working with that faith component. It's one of the reasons that I'm here teaching you guys today. It's an important part of what I do. So I just want to throw that out there. That's a great way to deal with some of those tough issues.
Yes, for sure. And thank you so much for everyone who's participating and asking questions. We are going to be moving into tea time now. So Mike, if you have the time, you are more than welcome to stay for tea time. If not, there's no pressure. We're just happy that you were able to present this morning, or I'm sorry, this evening. I don't usually step up like that. It's morning time for me, but anyways, sorry. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and once again remind everyone that this is recorded, so within the next week it'll be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it. And I just want to ask if anyone in your life missed this, if a colleague couldn't come this week. And if anyone just in general wants to have that registration link, please share it with anyone who would be interested. So we always love having new members join, and it's just always a great joy to meet everybody. So with all that being said, I'm going to transition it off to Errol, and he can take us to tea time. But goodbye.